my environment, my workstation. Okay? The first thing you need to do is look at their settings and look at their network adapter. This guy's on VMnet 2, which is fine. And he is on bridged, which is not fine. So, switch him to VMnet.
Any special settings we need for VMnet that we use?
Just that you get an IP address. That you get an IP address and your machines are set to the ACP, and I'll go with that. They've got to be able to see each other. So I'm going to turn both these guys on. As they're coming up, let me just kind of show you this. So the Windows Server 2000 standard, I have a VM of it somewhere. Obviously I have it on my laptop. The problem is it's pretty big. If I were to go to virtual machines, and it's a few gig in size. Gig, 2.5 gigs. So I guess we could copy this over, copy the virtual machine over onto some flash drives and then share it around. I don't have a problem with that, but you need at least probably looking like about something bigger than a 4 gig flash drive. It's completely clean. So if you want to bring that on Wednesday, I'll be more than happy to share it around. You put it on the machines, yada, yada, yada. And if you just Google backtrack 5R3, okay, you can go to backtrack-linux.org. Too far. Okay. So their latest version is Backtrack version 5, release 3. It is one of the most premier pen testing appliances out there, primarily because it's free. It comes with the Metasploit framework already built in, and you can go to their download page at the top. Careful of all the tricky stuff. You do not have to register. You can just go to the downloader option. You don't have to give them your name or anything like that. But you can look at release 3. Comes in 64-bit and 32-bit. The problem is the VMware version is only available in 32-bit. Okay? And the KDE, and it is only available with the GNOME graphics GUI. So click download. It downloads to your downloads folder. It's in a zip file. Unzip it. It is a folder that contains a VM, and put that folder in your virtual machines. It should be under Documents, Virtual Machines. Drop it there. It'll look like that. BT5R3-GNOME-VM-32. Okay? There's the actual, I actually have it downloaded here too. Okay? So, you know what? Let me do this real fast. Archive. Oh, it's because it's running. Never mind, I can't do that. I have to not have it running. Okay, anyway, I'll get to that in a minute. So, I have both these guys running. I'm not even going to bother with this right now. I'm just going to keep it running. I have done a few of the steps already for the 2003 machine, i.e. making my users, everything else. Oh, I do have to check the IP address. I'll do that real fast. Command prompt real quick. See that I'm on the 192.168.222.128. Great. Go over here. The backtrack. The backtrack will boot up with the login. On backtrack, your user is root. The password is Tor, which is root backwards. And then the next thing that you have to do is just type in the command startx. All one word. Startx. Okay. Once that is up, all right, I have several things up here. I need to, one, ensure that I'm on the same subnet. So, for those of you who have run Linux before, you'll know that the command, and for those of you who don't, the command to check your IP configuration, just like in Windows, we use ipconfig. This is ifconfig. So ifconfig. Looky there. I'm on the 192.168.222 network. Same network. Fantastic. So, 192.168.222, and this is whatever you make your network. It doesn't have to be this address, per se. So, backtrack is 129, and he's got 128. So, to test this simply, I'm going to ping each of them. Make sure I can ping myself. I can. Make sure I can ping my neighbor, and I can. Perfect. Ping myself. And I can ping the Windows box. Wonderful. Okay? Now, you need to do a couple of steps. Actually, let me pause there. I'll come back to that here in a little bit. Okay? Now that I can do that, I'm just going to exit out. There's a program under Applications, Backtrack, Exploitation Tools, Network Exploitation Tools, Metasploit Framework, Armitage. I'm going to keep that up there real quick. Take a picture of it. Commit it to memory. It's a little bit hard to find. Backtrack, Exploitation Tools, Network Exploitation Tools, Metasploit Framework, Armitage. Armitage is a GUI, a front end for the Metasploit Framework. Okay, it's fine, go ahead. Alright, it is a GUI for the Metasploit Framework. The Metasploit Framework is the penetration testing tool that you'll use. Okay? Now, why do I want to do that? Well, a lot of times it's very important for security professionals to test their defenses. Okay? This is one easy, good way for you to get a little bit of knowledge, a little bit of comfort with a penetration testing tool. So once I launch that, it's going to come up with a, you got to connect. This all stays the same. You don't change anything. It's going to come up with a RPC server not running, so you're going to say, yeah, go ahead, make an RPC server and make it run. It's fine. It'll come up, the connecting. This is your loopback address, and that's the port number it connects to. It takes a minute or two. The first time you ever do this, I've seen it take up to like 10 minutes. Just be patient with it. Your stuff's not broken. Give it 10 or 15 minutes the first time it ever runs, because it has to create the database, it has to load the modules in the database tables. This takes a little bit. Okay? Since I've done this quite a few times, it'll take a couple of minutes, but it'll be alright. Huh? Not right now, no. Yeah, it won't let me launch it. Backtrack. Exploitation tools. Network exploitation tools. Metasploit Framework. Armitage. Everybody write that down real quick. Backtrack. Applications. Backtrack. Exploitation tools. Network exploitation tools. Metasploit Framework. Yep.
Can we use 64-bit version of the background?
You can, but it's not going to be in a VM. That means you have to load it onto a virtual machine yourself and create that virtual machine. Yeah.
So we can actually download the virtual machine?
You can actually download the virtual machine and launch it.
Okay, no, that's right. I created it in the
Oh, that's fine. You can do that too.
Okay.
All right, everybody got that? Anybody not have it? Raise your hand. Okay, moving on. Okay, could not determine attack computer IP. What is it? So that's kind of strange. It's asking for your IP address. Looking for that right there. 192, 168, 222, 129. So once you have that, what I want you to do is we're going to scan that 2003 machine. Okay? And how we do that, okay, is we go up to hosts and then in-map scan. Anybody ever heard of in-map? Anybody ever heard of in-map? Okay, what is in-map?
I've used it to scan my network, or it made like a picture of my
Yep.
network with all the IP addresses.
All the IP addresses.
You used it to find a spam bot?
What?
Spam bot?
Spam bot?
Yeah.
You use it to find a spam bot?
Well, someone had one on the computer and they actually used that to find it.
Okay. It's a network mapping tool, or what is commonly known as a network enumerator. Okay? It is integrated in with Armitage to assist Metasploit. So what you can do is you can scan an entire network, you can scan one single host. Okay? We're going to scan one single host, which is this 2003 machine. But I could easily scan an entire network. So, I'm going to click that, and it's going to ask me enter the network range, or I can enter one single IP address. So I input the IP address of that Windows 2000 machine, which was .128. 192.168.2.128. That way it'll go really fast, and I won't look for a bunch of things out of the network that don't exist. I click OK. And down here in the bottom pane, I can kind of push this up a little bit. It's going through. Now, just because it comes back to cursor doesn't mean it's done. It found all of these open ports. All of these open ports. TCP ports, maybe some UDP ports. All right. And it's going through, a mapping of the software, and it is dumping that information to Armitage and Metasploit. And what Armitage Metasploit is going to do is it's going to look and fingerprint that operating system based on these open ports. And once it does that, it's going to look into a database that it has and go, okay, what are the possible vulnerabilities of this machine based on that OS fingerprint? Okay, this takes a couple of minutes for it to go through everything. It'll come up and pop up a window here in a minute, or 2 or 5, with that information. It'll give you updates as it goes through. So right now it's just told me that it found 20 services running on that IP, and now it's trying to fingerprint the operating system. It's running that script. And this is just a timestamp of when it did, so obviously the clock is off. It's not 11:27 at night. So there we go. Scan complete. So you click OK. And it even tells you what to do next. Use attacks, find attacks to suggest applicable exploits for your target. Alright. It puts up a little icon up there. It's fingerprinted it as in the Microsoft Windows XP family, which is what 2003 is. It's in that family of operating systems. Okay, the last thing that it did here, okay, it found out that it was actually the OS is Server 2003, 5.2, build 3790. Domain name is lab4.local, course name lab.4local. It pulled back as FQDN, net BIOS name, all kinds of goodies. Now what I can do is come up here, highlight it, go under attacks, and click find attacks. It's going to do a further analysis based on this information that has been dumped from INMAT. It'll tell you attack analysis complete. You'll now see an attack menu attached to the host. Happy Honey. You click OK. Yeah, hackers have like the most unique sense of humor ever. Then if I right click on the box, I can go to attack, and then there's all kinds of stuff that I can try. Alright. Deprecation, it's running a web server. I can try, looks like it might have found an Oracle database, a Samba database. SMB is NetBIOS services. So I can try all kinds of other stuff on it. This one here, MS08067, Net API, very well known NetBIOS vulnerability. So I can try that attack. One of the things that you need to understand about this line of work who's taken 470? Anybody taken 471? CIS 471? Internet security? One person? Did you learn about the differences between vulnerabilities, threats, and risks? Okay, good. I'm going to quiz you. What comes first? Vulnerabilities. Okay. What is a vulnerability?
Vulnerability is a weakness that can potentially be
Potentially.
exploited.
Okay, not potentially. It's a vulnerability that can be exploited. That then equals what? No, threat. Threat. All right. Once that threat has been validated, it then becomes a potential risk. Then you have to validate that risk. Which is where you give that risk a dollar amount, a value. And that value of that risk is then how you determine whether it is worth mitigating or not. Okay? So, if that risk is of significant value that needs to be mitigated, so if value is great, it gets mitigated. Okay? If it's not that great, if the price of mitigating that risk is worth more than the loss, you can do two things. So if risk does not equal the amount of mitigation, you A, transfer it, or B, you simply accept it. So when you transfer it, you basically do what? You give it to somebody else to worry about, right? Okay? When you mitigate it, you either come up with a solution or you can also transfer it as well. Okay, so you make it somebody else's problem here. You make it somebody else's problem here, but you paid for it. Okay, this is where you like buy insurance or something of that nature. Or you actually fix the problem. You mitigate it, you fix the problem. So that's how you go from vulnerability, identification of threat, identification of risk, validation of risk, through to solving that risk. But a lot of that comes down to the network security professional who does all of this. So they find the vulnerabilities are out there. They're easily identified, especially in the OS world, operating system world. Okay, and a lot of times in the database and application world as well. I'll show you a website where we can look that up. So let's just take note real quick. I'm going to jump over to my host operating system, MS-08067 NetAppy. What? nvd.nis.gov, that's what I did, didn't it? There, National Vulnerability Database. So this is a database that is put together by the Department of Homeland Security through the National Institute of Standards and Technology. Anybody ever seen this before? Pretty cool stuff. So any type of vulnerability that is out there, you can subscribe to this service, get emails or updates of any vulnerability that is identified, okay, and pushed out there and published, okay, by the federal government. Trust me, there are people in the federal government and their contractors that are doing this on a day-to-day basis. This thing is constantly updated. All right. So if I wanted to go through the database and just kind of search real quick for vulnerabilities, I can click up here on vulnerabilities, and it will ask me keyword search. Cool thing about Armitage and Metasploit is they follow the NIST guidelines. So if I put in MS08_067 NetAppy, that actually comes from Microsoft. That's Microsoft's designation of that vulnerability that they log. I'm just going to put the first few in there. Come on. You can do it. So, it finds this. The server service in Microsoft Windows 2000, Service Pack 4, XP, SP2, SP3, Server 2003, Service Pack 1, and Service Pack 2, Vista Gold, SP1, Server 2008, and 7. Pre-beta allows remote attackers to execute arbitrary code by a crafted RPC request that triggers an overflow during path canoniciliation. I would have to look that word up. That might be a paper. As exploited in the wild, a